Imagine coming home to find your loved one's skin hanging like a curtain, their head boiling in a pot, and body parts plated for dinner. Sounds like a horror film, right? But this terrifying tale is no fiction. It's the real-life crime of Katherine Knight, Australia's most notorious female killer. A woman so violent, so chilling, that even seasoned detectives were left traumatized. This is the disturbing case of the butcher who turned her boyfriend into a gruesome dinner. Katherine Mary Knight was born on 24 October 1955 in the regional town of Tenterfield, New South Wales, half an hour after her twin sister, Joy. Her mother, Barbara Ruffin, already had 4 sons from a previous marriage before starting a relationship with abattoir worker Ken Knight. The scandal forced the family to move, and when Katherine was just 4, they resettled in Aberdeen. By then, the household was already steeped in turmoil. Ken was a violent alcoholic who abused Barbara regularly, while Barbara herself was emotionally unstable and reportedly shared disturbing sexual stories with her children. From an early age, Katherine showed signs of deep instability. She experienced uncontrollable anger, even as a child. Classmates recalled her carrying a knife to school, intimidating peers, and even once assaulting a teacher in self-defense. She left school at just 15, illiterate, and took a job as a cutter in a clothing factory. But Katherine's real dream job emerged soon after, at the local Aberdeen Meatworks abattoir. She worked alongside her father and twin, quickly rising to the role of boner, an expert in processing carcasses. She earned her own set of razor-sharp boning knives, which she famously hung above her bed, so they'd always be handy if I needed them. Co-workers remembered her dominating male counterparts and being physically and verbally aggressive towards anyone who crossed her. At 18, she met and married abattoir co-worker David Kellett in 1974. Even at the wedding, her mother warned Kellett, "She's got a screw loose. If you wrong her, she'll fucking kill you." That night, Katherine attempted to strangle him. Over the next decade, domestic violence continued. She fractured his skull with a frying pan, burned his clothes, and attempted to kill their infant daughter by placing her on train tracks. Diagnosed with postnatal depression, she was institutionalized, only to return and continue the abuse. By her early 20s, Katherine Knight had already carved out a life steeped in violence, fear, and control. The slaughterhouse taught her how to take things apart, precisely, efficiently, without emotion. Her relationships mirrored her job, messy, bloody, and dominated by blades. But the worst was yet to come. Because Katherine wasn't done, she was only getting started. And the man who would face the full horror of what she had become was John Price. But Katherine's violent past wasn't behind her. It was only evolving. In the mid-1990s, she began dating John Charles Thomas Price, known as Pricey, a well-liked, hard-working father of 3 in the town of Aberdeen. At first, their relationship seemed stable, even affectionate. Pricey knew about her past, but he believed he could manage her temper. But like all her previous partners, he soon found himself trapped in a cycle of manipulation, abuse, and fear. As the years passed, Katherine's violence grew darker and more calculated. What began as shouting matches turned into physical assaults, and by the year 2000, their toxic love story would end in one of the most gruesome crimes Australia has ever seen. By late February 2000, Katherine Knight and John Price's relationship was on the verge of collapse. In an argument, Knight had already stabbed John in the chest. Terrified, he left their home, and on 28 February filed an apprehended violence order, restraining order, to protect himself and his 3 children. That afternoon, he confided in co-workers, "If I don't come to work tomorrow, she's probably killed me." He wasn't just fearful for himself. He believed she might harm his children too. That evening, Knight purchased new black lingerie and filmed her children, possibly as a twisted farewell. She then returned to John's house, where she sat quietly on the couch as he slept, before having sex with him and going to bed. At dawn, John's car remained parked, so a neighbor and co-worker knocked, then spotted blood on the front door. Police were alerted and forced entry into the house. They found Katherine comatose from a massive overdose of pills. Upstairs, John's body was discovered. He had been stabbed at least 37 times. He'd tried to escape, leaving blood trails through the hallway and outside, but was either dragged or stumbled back in to die in the hallway. Over the next several hours, Knight applied her abattoir skills. She skinned John in one seamless piece, using a butcher's hook along a living room architrave. Then, she decapitated him, suspended his pelt inside, and dismembered his torso, legs, and arms. With macabre precision, she cooked parts of his body in a stew. In the kitchen, police found John's head simmering in a pot with vegetables: carrot, pumpkin, cabbage, zucchini, still warm. 2 dinner plates were set, with baked human flesh, veggies, and gravy, each labeled with the names of his children. A third meal lay on the back lawn, possibly intended for herself. Near the table lay a gruesome note scrawled in John's blood, blaming him for raping my daughter, though none of the allegations stood up. It was an expression of her contempt and sadistic intent. That morning, Katherine was arrested at the scene. It was the culmination of planning, rage, and horrific skill. Her abattoir training applied to murder. A chilling end to a relationship plagued with violence. In October 2001, Knight stood trial. Although her lawyers planned to argue dissociation or amnesia, she ultimately pled guilty. Justice Barry O'Keefe described the crime as premeditated, finding Knight had played out a ritual of death and defilement. He sentenced her to life imprisonment without parole, the first woman in Australian history to receive such a sentence. Her papers were marked, never to be released. Knight appealed in 2006, claiming the sentence was excessive. The NSW Court of Criminal Appeal unanimously dismissed her appeal, calling her crime appalling, almost beyond contemplation in a civilized society. Today, Knight is incarcerated at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center. Known among inmates as Nana, or the Queen Bee, she reportedly mediates disputes and knits, but she remains in solitary isolation, her papers still stamped with the rare, never-to-be-released mandate. Behind the horror, what drove Katherine Knight? Experts largely agree her actions were not simply evil. They stemmed from deep-seated psychological dysfunction. Knight was officially diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, BPD, a disorder marked by intense emotional instability, explosive anger, fear of abandonment, and impaired impulse control. 2 of the 3 court-appointed psychiatrists at her trial concluded she suffered from BPD and was unlikely to ever improve. According to the DSM-5, BPD is characterized by erratic relationships and intense fear of abandonment, impulsive aggression or self-harm, unstable self-image, severe dissociation, or transient paranoia under stress. The defense argued she was dissociated during the murder, unable to recall the details. However, psychiatrists agreed she was legally sane at the time. Her verdict, responsible for her actions, even if driven by a fractured psyche, society was unprepared. Violent crimes, especially those involving cannibalism, are almost always male. Katherine Knight shattered gender assumptions. As one commentator noted, femininity in crime is an interesting investigation. When a woman commits violence with physicality and planning, it challenges stereotypes. The case forced Australia to reckon with domestic violence. Most efforts focused on supporting women victims, but Knight's story highlighted that men can also be victims, prompting a broader conversation about abuse tolerance and early intervention. Could this have been prevented? With BPD, evidence-based treatment like dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, can reduce emotional volatility and self-harm. But Knight never received such therapy before the murder. Her case highlights a crucial clash. Should individuals with severe mental disorders be treated in hospitals instead of prisons? Knight was criminally responsible, and the court sentenced her accordingly. But it also sparked calls for improved mental health support for high-risk individuals in domestic violence scenarios. Katherine Knight's case is one of the darkest in true crime history. A brutal reminder that evil doesn't always wear a mask. It can sit at the dinner table beside you. What do you think? Was Katherine a product of her upbringing, or was she always destined to kill? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this case chilling, like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that reveal the darkest corners of the human mind.